In this video, we will be discussing about kubectl quick reference. So, why do we use it? Why do we use alias and why do we use this auto completions and where do we save them and how does they work? At the same time, we will also look at how do we switch between clusters and how do we check what cluster we are using and how do we deploy something on the cluster and how does this quick references actually work. So there is an official documentation by kubernetes.io and you can see this is the one. You can just type kubectl quick reference and you will be coming to this specific web page. And when you are working on the cluster and you might not be able to complete autocomplete without adding these things to your terminal. I have added it already here, so I can just show you. So these three lines are important to autocomplete and to run k as kubectl. So once we input this alias k as kubectl, then only the k get pods or whatever we type with k will work, because then only the terminal will know what we are trying to refer. And these lines over here will help us to autocomplete our commands. For example, kget, depl, and tab deployments. So this is how we will basically work quicker, and this helps us to manage or deploy or do something in a fast way. Now here we also have added a documentation in the our repository. These three lines you have to add to the bash.rc file and then run the command source.bashrc. Now looking at the configs, so we will be working on multiple clusters. So now I have deployed two clusters. Let's run kind get clusters and you can see there are two clusters running, but on what cluster right now I am working on. So to see current config, we can just see this command over here, kubectl config current context. If we run this, it will show we are under this cluster. Okay, if you want to see how many clusters are there and what are the total contexts available, we can run this one. So you can see there are two contexts and we can also run one more command which is called view. So this will show your uh, kube config file. You can see there are two clusters here. One is this one and one is the other one, and we are in the first context. Now let's say I want to deploy something on the second context. How do we switch? So there is something called use context. Okay, so here these commands are also available in the quick reference. You can go through this official documentation and see the commands, what does they do. Now let's run this. Let's copy something from maybe here, use context, paste it, and kind. So this is the first one. I think we are already mapped over there. Now maybe let's go to second one. Okay, now if you run kget pods, you can see there is a nginx pod running. But let's go to the first context and now run kget pods. You can see there is a web app running, but both are in the default namespace, even though there is a different deployment over there because we are switching between the clusters. So when we are working on some questions and we have to deploy something properly, then it's always better to check what's the context we are in, and we can check the config view, how many clusters are there, and we can use the get context command. So this is an official documentation by Kubernetes, and this is always good to look at these things before we answer a question or before we deploy something, because if we deploy something in a wrong cluster, we are not going to get the score. Thank you. That's all for this video. See you in the next.